one of the things that amazes me the most about you is you have no awareness of how big of a deal you are in people's lives. You have this authentic leadership approach that draws people towards you. So you don't need titles, you don't need any of those things, and you draw people across the different cultures, races, and that for me is like, wow. The fact that you have no awareness of how much of an influential leader you are blows my mind. Last year we did the Women in Eye Care campaign, and there was all these amazing leaders across the globe that we featured, but there was specifically about 5 different leaders whereby their posts went super viral. And I went and looked at the people that were engaging your specific posts, and I was blown away by how diverse the audience was that was engaged with you. So for me, I haven't even introduced you. And that's how quickly you draw people towards you. So hi everyone. This is Africa Media, the biggest media platform for all things eye care on the African continent. I'm lost for words that I have this opportunity to represent such an amazing company, sitting next to Dr. Moodle, an ophthalmologist, a super cool individual, and you're going to get to discover that right now. Just the mindset, the approach to life that she's all about. And I have an idea of who you are, but the people that are watching don't know who you are. Who is Dr. Moodle? How did you end up in ophthalmology?
I think, as you very well put it, I'm a multifaceted person. I'm not just an ophthalmologist. Ophthalmology is one of the things I do. It's one of my passions. And I think that's also where the balance comes in, because I'm involved in different things. Dr. Moodle is from the Eastern Cape originally.
Okay. Is it from, there's a new term for...
That's where I am from.
That's where you're from.
And growing up in the Eastern Cape, obviously exposed to so many different things, especially during our political climate when I was younger. My dad was very involved in that. So from a very young age, I felt, you need to have a purpose in life.
Wow.
And I think my dad and my mom both taught me that. And when it comes to work, I think my dad is a doctor as well. And in ophthalmology specifically, I discovered it in my undergrad.
Okay.
I was just blown away by the technology,
wow.
the microsurgery, and the ability to give people back their sight.
Wow.
I mean, sight is a very important thing to everybody. I mean, there's no doubt about it. And the fact that the patients were just having issues with vision and not necessarily sick and dying, because I found throughout my medical training, it was one of the things I struggled with, is to actually break bad news to patients, dealing with death. And my first day as an intern, the first thing I had to do, my first task, it was January the 1st, wow. 2009. My first task was to go and certify dead patients. Oh. And then I was like, this is not life.
I can't even begin to put myself in your shoes.
And that was like my first experience as a doctor. And I was
wow.
like, this is not for me. I can't do that. You
wow.
know, I need to do something where I'm making people's lives better, and maybe not just prolonging the inevitable in terms of severe illness and severe sickness. And I just found it really rewarding. I went on to do both of my electives in my undergrad in ophthalmology, wow. one overseas and one in PE.
Where overseas?
Canada.
All right.
And just to expose myself to see how people do things differently. As you know, Canada is an NHI.
Yes.
And I was exposed to that side of medicine. And
there's someone who's sitting in Kenya.
Yes.
In Ghana.
Yes.
In Burkina Faso, who has got no idea what NHI is.
So it's a national health system,
okay.
similar to what South Africa wants to do. It's basically, there's no private and public sector.
Okay.
You've got a private ophthalmologist that might have their own practice setup, but everything is funded by the state.
All right.
So you get a salary from the government, but you will also see those private patients that are not necessarily Canadian citizens or residents that have to actually pay upfront for services. But they basically, it's like a public sector, a really big public sector.
All right.
You're just providing services to the whole population.
How long were you there for?
For 6 weeks.
For 6 weeks. Ah, fantastic. Sorry that I
No,
sort of like
it's
you were saying
fine.
something, but I just figured that someone that's watching this will have no idea
Of what happens on the other side of the
or
world.
what NHI as a whole
Yes.
is. Yeah.
And it definitely works for them. I think the perks of working that way is that your setup practice costs are a lot lower because
Okay.
the hospital, for instance, is buying all the scans and all of that. And so you send your patient to the hospital for special investigations, for instance. And in your rooms, you might just have your slit lamp and maybe one of like your laser or just an autoref. So the practice setup costs are a lot better. And then, yeah, so I compared my time. My sort of project was to compare, it was the top 10 conditions I saw in PE versus Canada.
Okay.
And funny enough, in PE, it was more diabetics, cataracts, glaucoma. Those
Wow.
are sort of the top conditions I saw. And because Canada's population is so diverse, I saw nothing like what I saw here.
Wow.
They're very strict on lifestyle. So I didn't hardly saw any diabetic retinopathy patients. I saw HSV keratitis, I saw Behçet's disease, all these funny uveitis, more infectious stuff related to specific populations.
Okay.
Very different. And cataracts, obviously. I mean, that's our most commonly seen
For sure.
sort
For
of
sure.
pathology. But very different, but people do things the same way.
I can imagine.
So approach to patients was the same, management was the same. I found that we weren't lacking in anything we do here in South Africa. We offer our patients exactly the same that's getting offered in sort of our first world nations, and that was very reassuring.
Wow.
So yeah, that was my pathway into ophthalmology. So after internship in ComServe, I went to the Transkei. I started an eye clinic in Lusikisiki with an ophthalmic nurse. She was doing it by herself before that.
Wow.
So-
I didn't know that about
So I didn't, initially when I was planning on going there, I was hoping to get some sort of one-on-one training with a specialist, but the specialist actually, I think, had problems with their contract, so they never came. So the nurse and I would just manage all the medical ophthalmology patients. We were sending patients to Umtata for their surgery. We had a waiting list because we were waiting for this person to come and assist
Sure.
us,
And they never
and
came.
they never came. And funny enough, that hospital was sponsored by Fred Hallows. So they had amazing slit lamps, they had theatre sets,
Sure.
microscope,
Wow.
everything set up, but no surgeon. And obviously I didn't know anything about operating, so I couldn't help those patients. So I eventually transferred to Umtata. I took my waiting list of patients with me.
Obviously.
And they already had their own waiting list, so they just had to join the queue. And it was very heartbreaking. I mean, I had these three gentlemen who were well into their 90s. The people in the hills of the Transkei live long.
Sure.
They live good lives. But
There's
these
a-
people can't see
see.
because they've got age-related
And I
cataracts.
can imagine that delay also comes
Oh.
with preconceived ideas about if I go see the doctor, I'm going to get worse off. Because I think that's the first time they have an awareness.
It's a very
of-
delayed presentation.
I can imagine.
Very delayed. So they all come with mature, hypermature cataracts. And then they join a waiting list. Instead of coming earlier so that you can still see, and then you join a wait list, so by the time you're done, you're still fine. You're not completely sort of, your quality of life isn't affected by it. I had these gentlemen, they used to call themselves the three blind mice. Because they would hold hands and walk into, we worked in a park home, like a caravan park home. Our clinic was inside there. And they would come in and say,
Wow.
Doctor, is the other doctor arrived yet? Not yet. And I sometimes
Wow,
think it was
wow.
also just to come and visit us, just to chat and talk,
Wow.
and that also stimulated them somehow, because they would chat, they couldn't see, but they would chat to the patients in the clinic waiting area. And that just made me very sad. And I think that's also why I was so passionate, or how I developed my passion for cataract surgery, is because it makes a huge difference to people like that.
Your day-to-day person, it's as if there's an immediate change in the entire
Completely.
vision.
Completely.
Wow.
And so when I went to Umtata, I joined that department. I was there for about a year, and then I transferred back to PE.
Okay.
So I worked in Utenag and Port Elizabeth in the eye department.
Okay.
So Port Elizabeth's eye department runs the Utenag Eye Clinic, and on a rotational basis we worked there. Again, exposed to all patients all over the Eastern Cape, because PE was a huge referral center. So patients, for instance, who Umtata couldn't help would get sent to PE.
Okay.
Umtata, Queenstown, East
The
London,
entire hub basically.
get transferred to
Okay.
PE. So I was exposed to a lot. I had amazing consultants that I worked with. They were all full-time in public sector. None of them were in private. So they were available all the time. really good surgeons, and the department as a whole delivered a really good service. They were one of the few departments in the country that were actually meeting the WHO requirements for cataract surgery.
Wow.
So
that's huge.
Because of their outreaches, they eliminated blinding cataracts in the area, to the point where as a trainee you were actually not doing those dense, hard, mature cataracts anymore. And as a result, doctors in training there were managing your normal kind of private practice cataracts,
Wow.
so your less dense cataracts, your patients that just need to renew their drivers and are not making the cut,
in situations where the cataract was picked up early on,
Yes.
as compared to 6 years later, when
Exactly.
it's now a very dense cataract. I hear
Exactly.
you.
So you also developed then your phaco skills, because your mature cataracts will sort of manage your manual sort of extracapular
I
cataract
hear you.
surgery. And as a result of all those patients being treated, you need to move on to learning how to do a phaco, because that's what those patients need.
So you ending up going further and further into the interest of cataract surgery, it was as a result of the need that you were catering
Yes,
for, not
yes.
that you went into ophthalmology looking
Just
to
for
say,
that.
I want to go into cataract
No.
or whatever. The need that you have found yourself in led to your passion evolving and developing. and
Exactly,
growing.
in that specific field. And then I came to Wits for my specializing, and it's exactly the same thing. I know you wanted to ask me about how I developed my interest for the certain subspecialties, and it's exactly that. It's what you're exposed to.
Okay.
So in terms of my training at Wits, I had great mentors when it came to cataract surgery, glaucoma, VR,
Wow.
and in terms of cornea and sort of anterior segment surgery, they are great like fellowship trained specialists there, but I just didn't have exposure with them in theatre.
Ah,
So there will be registrars that come out of Wits who are really good at cornea because they
Ah.
spent a lot of time with that corneal specialist.
do you find that then, I'm not sure if it's a difficult question, there's a form of a limitation to the training aspects of it, where you might have a passion for this,
But
for
you sort of
find your
guide
way,
to another-
you are guided
Yeah.
based on the mentorship team
Definitely.
or person that you're finding in a particular environment, and you will only get to discover who those people are when you get into that particular
100%.
environment. It's not like you've got a base point beforehand to say, oh, okay, at that school, these are the people that do this,
exactly.
and okay, I hear you.
I think all the training departments all over the country have got their sort of niches. Everyone is good at everything, but they've got maybe Cape Town, for instance, has the only ocular oncologist initially. Karen Lacuna was the only one in the public sector
Wow.
in Cape Town. So even PE would send their patients there,
Wow.
the oncology patients. So those registrars got exposed to oncology and ocular
Wow.
oncology. So that's what I mean. It depends on your exposure. Wits, for instance, the only sort of downfall about Wits is the amount of registrars we have. So we're the biggest department in the country. And obviously then that affects your theatre time.
Okay. Yeah.
So you obviously spreading it out amongst all 24 registrars, so you get less theatre time, less exposure to maybe exactly what you want to do, but you get enough exposure in terms of completing your logbook and all of that, meeting the requirements, all of that. So because you also rotate in your training to the different subspecialties, so everyone's exposed to everything clinically, but surgically it just depends on what cases are booked on your theatre day, who's the consultant, if it's maybe
and you can't choose on
you
that.
can't choose that. So if it's also a junior consultant, then they'll be assisting the senior consultant. So the reg doesn't
you even go
really
even
get
further down the
exactly.
line.
So it's just a luck of the draw. So that's how people also develop their niches or their interests.
Okay.
Like you said, it might not be what you planned on going into, but you, at the end of the day, South Africa trains general ophthalmologists. We can do a bit of everything.
Which is a positive.
Which is a very good thing, because you can go and work in any klein like Dorpy or rural area and provide a good service to the patients, a comprehensive service to the patients.
In the short time that we have sort of like been working with iAfrica Media, I've not heard of cases where you've got ophthalmologists from South Africa working in other parts of the continent, whether it be Morocco, Egypt, Tunisia, or vice versa. Am I correct in that there isn't that interchange of ophthalmologists going not overseas
but within the
continent? And if I'm correct in saying that, why do you believe that's the case? Is the educational standards different across Africa, or no one is really sort of like pushing that agenda of having people work across the continent? And that's the first part of, or the second part of the question would be, with regards to the Ophthalmology Society of South Africa, you guys have your annual conference taking place. And so do you have ophthalmologists coming from other parts of the continent to the conference here? Or vice versa? Do you guys attend conferences on the continent, or is it always just that overseas component?
So strangely enough, it's funny you bring it up. When I joined the AOC Leadership Development Program in 2019, it was linked with OSA in Cape Town. Okay. That's where we had our first sort of session. And Nasir Ali and myself are the AOC LDP reps from OSA.
You like abbreviating stuff. And there's a person right now who's like, okay, what is she talking about?
African Ophthalmology Council.
Perfect.
Leadership Development Program.
Perfect.
So Nasir Ali, myself, Maanda Mabogo, we're all ophthalmologists in South Africa. So we're the sort of South African representatives in this class.
Okay.
And the one thing we were shocked by and taken aback by was Nasir and I literally said exactly what he said. Why are we not getting more involved in the rest of Africa? We didn't know that some of the collective societies existed, like COEXA, Miyako, all these things, and we were like, we didn't even know that they existed. Why don't we know about these societies? And since then, I can tell you from a young ophthalmology perspective, we've tried to get involved. I know, like Nasir, for instance, went to Rwanda. Rwanda had a COEXA before COVID. I think it was 2019, later 2019. He went and attended there with some of the consultants from VITS. So we're definitely trying to.
Okay.
But I don't think it's a matter of not wanting to be involved. I think it's just people don't know. People are not aware. In terms of collaboration, I mean, no one else has got the population that we have on the continent. The research is only going to come from us.
That's the thing.
So if we don't collaborate, there's not going to be anything in the Lancet and the American journals and all this, because no one is doing the work and only we can do the work. So obviously, the more we collaborate with each other, the better for the continent as a whole. I think in terms of OSA, we definitely do get attendees from our neighboring countries.
Okay.
So you'll find Namibia, Zambia, Zim, all of that. Like literally our neighboring countries will attend. And I know, for instance, our one prof at VITS used to go across to Zim, for instance, as an examiner. Okay. So there is that relationship in terms of training as well.
There's definitely room for more things to take place.
I mean, even just as like our neighboring countries and us, the amount of research we could do together is endless. There's no studies on our populations, no huge studies on our population. I mean, the only people that can do it is us. So there's definitely room for that. And I'm glad you asked that question, because it's a question we asked ourselves 2 years ago, where we were actually just taken aback.
Wow.
When we heard that Mozambique has got, they've got a handful of ophthalmologists servicing their whole country.
That's crazy.
It blew my mind. Blew my mind. Wow. The fact that they, at that point, they were having really bad tropical storm in Mozambique. They had to take a bus to get to Cape Town.
Wow. That's crazy.
As ophthalmologists.
That's crazy. Not even flying. Because they couldn't.
They couldn't. Wow. Because it just was inaccessible to get to where they needed to go to take a flight.
Wow.
So it was really an eye-opener for us. And I think in South Africa, as ophthalmology or an ophthalmology community, we are quite advanced. We can compete with any sort of first world country when it comes to, we've got leading ophthalmologists in our country.
For sure.
And I think we would benefit from our colleagues in our neighboring countries, and they would benefit from us. And I think just getting involved, whether it's collaborating on research or having people come over and spend time, or we go and spend time across, would be ideal. But I know there's obviously regulatory issues with regards to that. So obviously registration and having licenses to practice differs in every country. I know with the HPCSA, it's not easy for international, whether you're on the continent or not, international doctors to come and work as specialists here. They actually have to join the public sector as medical officers.
First, yeah.
And then they write the exams, and it's the same as us going to the UK or wherever.
100%.
So it's not easy just to trade places and sort of come and work here for a few months, or invite someone to your practice for a.
But I'm glad that you guys have already identified that need, because I think when it comes to healthcare and many other things on the continent, there has to be more than just being passionate about your career. you have to have a genuine concern
Yeah.
for what you do.
Yeah, otherwise
for
you won't
people,
pursue
because
anything.
Africa, it can only be changed by us
Exactly.
in Africa.
Exactly.
Whether it be healthcare, IT, finance, whatever the industry, we ourselves need to say, you know,
No one else is going to bother.
I can be comfortable having a fancy practice, earning this much money, and having a lovely family. But in Africa, unfortunately, actually, or fortunately, we have to go beyond that comfort level,
Yes.
comfort zone, to say, you know what, I'm going to raise my hand up. I want to get involved in leadership. I want to get involved in that organization. And that's what I've picked up from you, that you're involved in a lot of leadership activities. And you were saying that was influenced a lot by your parents. What are some of the leadership, besides the one that you just mentioned now with Dr. Ali and what was the other doctor's name?
Manda Mabogo.
Mabogo. You also do a lot of other stuff within the ophthalmology spectrum. Do you mind going into detail about exactly where you're involved, what's your role there, and so forth?
Okay, so I'm the chair of Young Ophthalmology South Africa. It was started by Yanda Babisa, who's the current president of ASA. It was her brainchild in about 2017. She actually came from that leadership development program as well. And the whole, during the program, you have to have a project that you're working on. So her project was to initiate this program of Young Ophthalmology. And it was launched in 2017 in PE. At the ASA conference, where it wasn't really a society yet, but she wanted to get volunteers to help us set it up.
Okay.
And then the first committee was formed in 2018, so I was part of that committee, and she was sort of the lead for that. And then I took over in 2019. We would have handed over in 2020 if we could have. So it's been a long tenure for us. It's been 2 years, and we're going to have a YO weekend where it's an academic weekend, and we do a voting of the new committee.
Wow.
It was supposed to be in August, but because of the third wave, we postponed it to November.
Okay.
And my role as a chair, well, I'm involved in sort of the private practice portfolio.
Okay.
And then I'm involved in setting up the conference. So Mzwandile, Mjwacha, and myself are setting up the conference. And it's just to provide guidance and leadership and, how would I say, relate those skills onto the next people coming in. Leadership for me is not about a dictatorship, and I'm lucky enough to be married to someone who's also very similar to what I am, and I learn a lot from him and his leadership skills. It's about upliftment and about bringing people to your level, not about talking down to people, giving people instructions, having people follow your rules and your law. It's about making everybody capable.
I like that.
And that's essentially what YO is.
Wow.
The committee is there to provide guidance. It's there to provide guidance and to sort of champion kind of the next generation of leadership and all of that. And we're not there as a regulatory body. We've got HPCSA for that. We've got the college that does our training, but ASA generally has that role in ophthalmology where you're sort of the moral body, for sure. And we help where we can, and we assist people who want to I got an email that just yesterday about a company in Durban that wants to set up a screening program for kids, and would we be involved in setting up the model for them because they want to have a referral system in place.
Very nice.
So that's what we're doing. So I just refer them to Mzwandile, who's based in KZN, and he's going to help them set that up. So that's what we try and do. And like you say, I don't see myself as this person that everyone else sees me as. It's very strange.
Which is a good thing. I think the most effective leaders are those that don't have that desire for titles, positions.
Yes.
Are those that see a need,
and sort it out, exactly.
Look at, I went through this. The next person that comes after me should not go through that. So I'm going to make it easy for the next person. Now, obviously, you have to eat at the end of the day.
Yeah.
You can do all this running around, getting involved.
Volunteer work,
which doesn't pay the bills.
It feeds your soul. Not your mouth.
And where we're sitting right now, we're sitting at a very beautiful practice. We are at the Pretoria Eye Institute. And there's multitudes of eye specialists here. And you are located at the Pretoria Eye Institute. How is your practice set up? what do you do here? How does your own practice set up within the bigger hospital work?
Okay, so we've got, like you said, quite a few ophthalmologists here. If I stand, it's probably just under 30 or 30 already, if I'm not mistaken.
I was scrolling on my phone.
There's a lot.
And I was like, okay, there's too many here. Let me stop at your name.
There's a lot. And funny enough, I mean, people would think so many people based in one spot, there's not enough work. There's more than enough work. There's more than enough work.
And I know that there's more than enough work because 10 years ago, the number was less than the current ophthalmologists that are here right now.
Exactly.
So the number of ophthalmologists is increasing.
Yes.
And clearly there's more than enough
And
work.
I mean, we don't just service Pretoria, we service Gauteng as a whole.
For sure.
We service Mpumalanga, Northwest, Limpopo. Our patients come from far and wide. I've even got patients from Durban, I've got patients from the Congo.
Wow.
Patients come, I think, because the Institute has a really good reputation. So a lot of the times when we get patients from other areas, it's because they want a second opinion, or they heard their brother came here and had, great experience, so they want to come, and even if it's traveling 200 kilometers to come do it, they'll come do it.
Okay.
So we service a wide area. And I was lucky enough to be invited to join. One of the most stressful things when you're finishing your registrar time is, what am I going to do next?
I've heard that quite a lot from a lot of...
And setting up a practice is a costly affair. I mean, from day one, you're putting yourself into a huge amount of debt just to start up, just to open your doors. And this is why I think a lot of guys also would stay in the public sector for that security, because they know the system, they know how things work. It's a lot less daunting than just jumping into the deep end. I think I had a relatively soft landing because my friend and colleague invited me to join him. We did our reg time together at Wits.
Very nice.
So we knew each other and we had a very good work relationship as well. We work in a very similar fashion, we operate in a very similar fashion, so it works for us. And the nice setup that we have is that because he had already set up the practice, I decided to join and I just contribute toward the expenses of the practice. So it wasn't like going and taking out loans So for me specifically, it was a lot easier than what it would be just to go out on your own.
Okay.
And I'm also a very social person, so I never wanted to actually work on my own.
Wow.
Funny enough, Johan Lambrecht and I always spoke about it as well, and we were like, oh, we should actually work together.
Wow.
But then Clayton offered me this, and I said, you know what, it's only a 25-minute drive from me. I live in Joburg.
Wow.
Funny, and it was against traffic, and when I came here, I actually felt at home. I was like, this could work. And I stayed. Nice. It's been 2 years now and I love it. It's an amazing place to work. There's a lot of support from the other ophthalmologists. We have a good community of ophthalmologists here. We've got our own sort of academic program where we do journal club. They do angiogram meetings. We have case discussions. So any weird and wonderful things we present to our colleagues, we have discussions on it. Everyone will give their sort of 2 cents worth of what the management options should be or what they would consider. So it's a really nice environment to work in.
And do you have a good relationship with, because I could imagine the setup in where you've got so many ophthalmologists, how is the working relationship with then the optometrists within the area? Because I'm sure there's what you specialize in, there's a whole lot of other people within the hospital that do the same thing. Yeah. So in the midst of all of that, you need to create your own value proposition. You need to create your own approach to your patients. You need to create so many things that are unique to your guys' setup here. And so, how's your current relationship with the ophthalmologist? With not ophthalmologists, with optometrists within the area. How does that go?
I haven't physically met anyone, but the way I sort of keep in contact with them is I like to do reports. So as soon as I get a referral from an optom, I give them a report back.
Nice.
And I get feedback from them as well.
And that sort of like builds your credibility.
Yes.
Because you obviously are a young ophthalmologist. And so a lot of the time...
But years to go.
You still have years to go. So sometimes an ophthalmologist, especially the more senior ones, they'll obviously then tend to refer to the ophthalmologist who has been around for forever.
Yeah.
Whereas the newer ophthalmologist, the new optometrist might not necessarily be in a position to know Sanushka Woodley, and so they will just refer to the institution.
Yes.
And perhaps when the referrals get here, they might not necessarily come to you.
Exactly.
So there are so many dynamics that are at play.
So the nice thing.
obviously they're creating your own way
Yes.
of being noticeable, being known, and so forth.
And the nice thing about the institute is that when you are on call, you deal with all the walk-ins in the hospital.
Ah, nice.
So a lot of the time, like exactly like you say, the letter is directed to Pretoria Eye Institute, and then the patient will come to whoever is on call, and that's how they get to know you.
Wow.
Because I think it's important to create a relationship with your local optoms. I don't necessarily go door to door and say, hi, I'm so and so, and here's my cards, please refer patients to me. I work more on developing the kind of like clinical relationship, whereas we're managing this patient together.
100%, I like that.
You sent the patient to me for a cyclo, and I said the patient might have a little bit of an accommodative ESO as well. I'll monitor that. We'll repeat the refraction in a year. I'll let you know if there's anything to do.
From a clinical point of view, you're making sure that the level of communication, the level of excellence that you are providing on your side, it's in a manner in which the optometrist can relate with and want to keep communicating.
Yeah, it's teamwork at the end of the day. I mean, some patients need both. Any refractive patient needs both of us. Any pediatric patient doing any sort of refraction or any squint needs both. And then the patients go back to their optom for their glasses or their contact lenses and so forth. So it's a bit of both, especially even patients who are sent for glaucoma screening. I like to give a bit of sort of not academic information. I said, well, I've done the latest scans and this is what we look for first. You're not necessarily going to just manage someone on a high IOP, because a high IOP could just be ocular hypertension and not glaucoma. So there's a few things we do to work patients up, to watch them closely, and we manage the ones who have risk factors. And then I tell them about that. So they're also a bit more enlightened, I think, at the end of it. This is why I'm going to manage this one, this is why I'm not going to manage this one. So when the patient goes back to them for their new script or their glasses into your son, they also have some insight with regards to what's happening with the patient on the medical side. Because it's pointless them just referring all the time for high IOP and they don't know what I'm doing on my side for that high IOP. So it works both ways.
Here's a question. You mentioned that it's 2 years that you are here, and half of that time we were in the midst of a pandemic, right? How is
worst time to start private practice?
I can imagine, eh?
Yeah.
I can imagine.
I actually feel really more sorry for my colleagues that set up shop on their own.
Wow.
Because you can imagine, at least here we've got foot traffic.
100%.
Patients or optoms know the Eye Institute has a 24-hour service. So they know they will just send the patient with a letter and the patient will get sorted out. But someone set up in a building on their own, they don't have any foot traffic. They're reliant on referrals, on word of mouth, on, and I really was so grateful that I was here.
Wow.
Because I still had patients to see, and even though it was a lot less, we could still run.
Wow.
Even though we weren't doing elective theatre, we could still work. We just then, in the beginning, I think during level 5, we alternated, so we weren't both here all the time.
Okay.
And when theatre started opening up again, then it almost went back to normal.
Wow.
I think during the peaks we will always see a dip. Like it's been very quiet the last month, but once the peaks sort of dip, and now that everyone's getting vaccinated as well, patients are more confident to come out.
And what do patients come here for? What do you, besides cataract, what else do you do here at the practice?
So I do most of the medical side of ophthalmology. So anything from corneal ulcers to glaucoma to uveitis to all of those things, scleritis, like all your medical stuff. And then surgical, cataract and glaucoma mostly. VR I'm getting into. I was supposed to go to Germany in 2020 to do a course there, but obviously because of COVID I couldn't go. So that's on sort of the back burner for now. So I learn from my colleagues, I sit in with them, I take my patients to them to be operated on, and I assist with procedures. So that's how I'm sort of getting into it. I was also on maternity leave, so that was like a few months off from my sort of training.
Yes.
COVID has definitely, in that regard for me, slowed me down professionally, because I had this plan and this trajectory that I was sort of on, and this is where I want to be, this is what I want to be able to do by the time 2020 comes.
And it changed a lot of aspects. Completely.
Wow. So it's just delayed everything that I want to do in terms of
equipment side of things. What do you guys use from an equipment side of things? Because there's a young ophthalmologist who's probably sitting in Namibia, who's like, okay, you know what, I want to be on my
Set up.
own, or I want to set up a practice, work with someone, and they're considering, okay, what the financial investment involves a lot of equipment as well. So what equipment do you guys use? Obviously, you came in with some of the equipment already being
bought.
there, but what are some of the equipment that you guys use?
So obviously, I mean, standard is your slit lamp. I think you need to have a slit lamp in each of your consulting rooms. Things like an indirect, you just need to buy one. It's not like you need to equip every room with everything. You can switch between the rooms.
Okay.
So slit lamp, indirect, you need a bed to be able to examine some of your retinal patients on, some of your pediatric patients on, some to do some of your sort of side room procedures like your chalazions and all of that. An autoref and sort of an eye care or an IOP sort of screening device. So our ophthalmic assistant would do that for us, but we would always check on the Goldman as well. But that helps. How would I say? The ophthalmic assistant helps in that they do an IOP, they do an autoref, they do a VA before you even see the patient.
Okay.
And you can sort of double check whatever you want to, while you're examining the patient. In terms of your bigger things, like I said, here we're lucky because the hospital owns all the, not the hospital, there's a company that owns all the special investigations equipment.
Okay.
But I think you would definitely need an OCT in your practice. That goes without saying. If you are going into a corneal or anterior segment or a refractive practice, you need a pentacam. But OCT is definitely the one main thing you need, and then your biometry machine.
Okay.
So the best one to get at the moment is the IOL Master 700 because it's got a sort of OCT built into it, but it's the most up-to-date one in terms of the new IOL formulas and all of that we use. And I think then in terms of laser, if you're managing a lot of diabetic patients, you will need to invest in an argon laser. And if you're doing cataract patients, you need to invest in a YAG. The nice thing about the YAG is that you can also do SLT to treat your glaucoma patients.
Okay.
So it's a bit of a two-in-one. And yeah, it's a
So you're fortunate then to be exposed to such a diverse range of various diagnostic equipment that you are able to at any given point in time say, you know what, this is the route that I'm taking, or my patient requires this, and this is the procedures that I'm going to be able to do because you've got the equipment here readily available.
Yes.
Wow, that is very, very interesting. Your passion for eye care, it's really something that is very, very inspiring, and I can't wait to see what happens 5 years from now, 10 years from now, where you are literally taking the rest of the continent by storm. You're taking the globe by storm. You recently got the opportunity of speaking at a global event, literally. How was that?
I think my global opportunities have come from a global WIO forum that was formed about 2 years ago.
Okay.
And it was just from people having conversations like you and I, where WIO leaders from across the globe were basically meeting each other on an email thread.
Wow.
And my first conference that I spoke at was in 2019 in Turkey, and then the next one was in Singapore. And it all came from just being connected with the WIOs from across the world. And that's how I met Matt, who does the who did the Cake and Pie Expo.
Yes.
And you should actually meet him. You guys are exactly the same. But he met me via someone from India. That's how he reached out to me. And we first did an interview online where he just wanted to get some history about South Africa, and we chatted. And then he's like, Smishka, we're doing this unconventional ophthalmology conference. I want you to do a talk, but it mustn't be anything academic. I was like, what do you want me to talk about then? And then he's like, tell me about we chatted. He's like, tell me about your experience in ophthalmology and I'll tell you what you're going to talk about.
Wow.
And when I, funny enough, was talking about the Transkei, he's like, that's it. We're calling this peace and trauma in the mountains of South Africa, and this is what you're going to talk about. Because telling him about the trauma that I saw there. And that was my talk.
Wow.
Just based on all the trauma we saw related to alcohol, related to bottles being used. And in this climate that we're in now with COVID, I had so much more meat to add.
Of course.
Because our headlines were all related to the effect that alcohol has on the availability on hospital beds, on the cost to the healthcare system and the burden to the healthcare system. So I sort of tied all of that together and came up with this very non-academic talk, but that's what he wanted. He wanted something just different.
Wow.
And so that's how these conversations evolve. It starts off with you and I talking.
Absolutely, I agree with you.
And then
I'm living proof
go
of
sideways.
that. I'm
Exactly.
living proof of that.
Exactly.
I always say that there are people waiting on the other side of your obedience.
Yes,
It's
that's a good one.
literally people waiting on the other side. And if you are sort of like just in your little box, you're missing out on so many
Missing out.
opportunities. So optometrists, ophthalmologists, optical dispensers, connect. There's stuff that's happening in your country that is different from what's happening in South Africa, and there's stuff happening in South Africa that is different from what's happening in your country. When we connect, when we share those stories, when we put that content online, when we have these conversations, it's going to open up a wide range of opportunities and doors, and we'll be realizing and having awareness of how similar, diverse, unique we are as an industry within the African continent. So I'm excited. That's why I'm saying that it's sort of like that slow start, but at any given point in time now, there's going to be a transition, and all of a sudden you're going to be.
And you can't keep up with the
you won't keep up
momentum.
with the momentum. But we want to say thank you to you. Every time Africa Media has picked up the phone to call you and say, Dr. Moodle, this is what we're doing, you have been the first person to just get on board. Thank you very, very much. When we actually did, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, we used to do voice podcasts before.
Yes,
and the first video podcast that we did was with you and
Johan.
And since then, it changed our narrative, it changed how we do things. So I can't wait to see what this then results in changing, because I know that there will be lots of ophthalmologists who will be like, but why did she get interviewed? What about me? So when you see me here,
then I know why.
You know why? Because of the impact that you're having. You know, you don't realize that you've got a massive impact. So thank you very much for this. Where can people connect with you?
So you can either email me on drsanushka@gmail.com, or my work email is drmoodle@theeyesite, so theeyesite.co.za. And whoever you are, I mean, if you want to chat, if you want some clinical advice, if you just want a shoulder to lean on, reach out. I'm available.
Wow. And for all the organizations that are looking at this or watching at this interview, she's an incredible speaker. She brings a different element to all speaking engagements. So do connect with her. She's going to add so much value to your speaking event. And if you have not connected yet with iAfrica Media, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, as well as check out all the content on our website, www.iafricamedia.com. And we look forward to connecting with you on our social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, and of course, LinkedIn. This has been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
We wish you all the best with your family life, business, practice, career, and all the leadership responsibilities that you have. May it grow. We look forward to chatting to you again after a couple of months, so that we can just get progress in terms of what's happening on your side.
Sure.
And yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Obi. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. Cheers, everyone.
Bye.